Hi, everyone, and welcome to Active Justice. I'm Corey Hale from Culture Banks, and my partner in crime here is Mel Ochoa from Landmark Ventures. And we have an exciting conversation that we're going to have with a true change agent and activist. But Mel, for some of our viewers out there who are saying, well, what's really the difference between social justice and active justice? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And hi, Corey. Good to see you as always. And I'm so excited about partnering with you on these conversations. Social justice really, I think, is the broader framework, the broader system. It's what we're all working toward together, hopefully arm in arm. But when we think of active justice, and as you and I started talking about what's happening around us in the world and some things that you and I are personally involved with, we thought, well, what does this all mean as we go forward from the very important statements and the commitments being made right now? What does that actually look like long term in our communities, in business? Ranging from policies or how products are made, or how lending practices are developed. What truly does this mean in the day to day world that we're going to be living in for the rest of our lives? Right now is a moment in time, and it's a very important shift. But how are these things going to start infiltrating into our business lifestyles, our community lifestyles, everything around us? And so I'm really glad that we're bringing in voices from business, from community, from elsewhere to think about the long-term effect of the great things that we're seeing every day right now.
Yeah. Yes. Well, there are so many change agents out there right now, Mel. And I think you say it best when you talk about justice forward, moving past just the normal conversation and really getting into action. That's why I love the first guest that we're going to have joining us in just a second, Genesis B, and what she is literally the definition of active justice, right? She moved past the conversation and really took action and got change implemented.
Yeah, you think how amazing that people like Genesis come across our paths in life, and you just smile and you're so inspired. I think for me is just the question on everyone's mind is, how do you create true change, big change, right? And there's always this almost uh, you know mountain, if you will, in front of you, and you don't know how to climb it. And Genesis has been so amazing in her work throughout her life, but as an artist and as an advocate and as an activist. And I've seen that come to fruition in a lot of ways, knowing her for many years. But recently, this is such a big step in our country's history, and it is so just powerful to hear from Genesis' point of view what that journey has looked like, not only for her but for so many before her, in terms of the work or the voices. And so I'm just excited to talk to somebody who can really point to something and say, this is our work collectively, and this is what change looks like.
Yes, we have a very powerful person, and her story is unique, kind of like none other. What she's been able to accomplish here just in the past few weeks, even though her path to getting here has been several years in the making. But still, when we get to talk to our guest today, she is going to blow your mind. And before Mel, we get to her, I do want to tell our viewers a little bit about her background. First of all, her name is Genesis B. And if you didn't know her name before this active justice conversation, I assure you, you will not forget it. She has been working in the social activism space for a decade plus at this point. But her most recent accomplishment, really one that we can say is an accomplishment for us all, is that she has been able to get the Mississippi state flag taken down and is currently in the works to be changed. And I'm sure many of you guys have seen coverage about the Mississippi state flag. She's going to go into grand detail about her path to getting there, what her social activism has been, what it looks like, and what it's going to be going forward. So without further ado, let's bring in Genesis.
Hi, Genesis. How are you today?
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. You guys look great.
You look great. So nice to see you again. I think the last time I saw you was in New York City at your art show opening, and a wonderful show. And you've been up to a lot, both before that, but recently over the last couple months. Over the years I've known you, I've been just so inspired by you and respect you so much in your work, and in particular your voice. Your voice is so strong in change, and it's really nice to sit down with you. And I'm glad we can have this chance to talk to you for a little bit. I guess I would love to just open things up and say, look, the Mississippi state flag has officially been changed forever. It's no longer your state flag. So congratulations on the work that you've been doing, but also just the work of so many before you. Maybe you can take us through the process over the last few years, but also the process before that with so many others before you. How did this happen, and what part did you play in all of this?
I played an itty bitty part towards the end. So I jumped into this battle against the state flag, Mississippi state flag, in 2016 when I did this protest in New York City at SOBs, and I put a noose around my neck, draped a Confederate flag over my body at a sold out show in SOBs, and had a few choice words for my governor, Phil Bryant. And someone snapped that picture, and the next day the picture just went viral, went everywhere. A lot of threats against my family and myself, very polarized reaction. Like some people were like, I didn't even know the state flag had the Confederate emblem in it. Didn't know Mississippi was so pro-Confederate still. Other people were supportive of me. And then there were people who just hated what I did, then false articles were written about me saying I desecrated an American flag, which caused even more backlash against myself, which is something I would never do. I'm actually a military brat, and most of my ancestors have served in all the major wars. So it's not something I would do, but so that's when my battle started. And I began doing like press tours with Anjanou Ellis. She kind of picked me up and took me under her wing, and helped her Take It Down America situated with a fiscal sponsor, the Middle Project. And did 2 national tours, speaking tours, to spread awareness about the issue, because a lot of people around America didn't know that their tax dollars are being used to fly that flag in DC. Was being used to fly that flag. It's massive. The movement has been massive, and I've just been like played a humble part in bringing it to national or international attention with that protest.
Yeah, Genesis, when you were just saying about a lot of people don't know the history, they don't necessarily know about the past, why the Mississippi flag, was designed the way that it was. What does it mean to you now when you start to see these different monuments across the country and flags, specifically the Mississippi state flag, coming down? How does the U.S. really start to reckon its racist past in order to move forward?
That's a great question. It's something that I've been kind of pondering and researching. I saw this video, a documentary by Michael Moore called Where to Invade Next. Very fascinating documentary. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. And one place he goes is Germany. So he's trying to figure out what resources he's going to take from European countries, he's going to steal and bring back to the U.S. And in Germany, the way that they have sought reconciliation and atonement has been fascinating when it comes to their National Socialist past in Nazi Germany. They are very open about that past. They teach it at grade level, and it's not whitewashed. They're like, this happened. Like, our government did this. Children are taught about it. Children are spoken to by survivors of the Holocaust, right? So it's an intrinsic part of their education system. In America, we haven't really come to terms of the true brutality that occurred, not only slavery, but Reconstruction and Jim Crow era and segregation. And Mississippi has a very particularly disturbing history. You know what I mean? And it's not taught in the books. And that's one thing, is like taking those symbols and putting them in museums so that we can learn, and not whitewashing the history. Like I want that flag to be in a museum. That's where it belongs. I don't want to erase that history, because our children need to know what other humans are capable of doing to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have seen a lot of that go on, especially throughout the history of the US. And you're absolutely right about how other countries, specifically a country like Germany, I mean, there are so many memorials all across the country, right, paying tribute to what happened during that time period of the Holocaust. And here in the US, we barely are taught about not just Black history, but American history, right, which does encompass slavery and everything that kind of, it's like we almost erase the bad part and just act like it didn't happen. And then we're here today seeing things unfold. But yeah, I think especially Mel and I, when we think about active justice and what that means, you to me, and I think Mel, you would agree, are really like living proof of what active justice is, right, Mel?
Yeah, absolutely. You're as active as it gets. You're out there, you're putting on shows, you're talking to communities, you're out there. I also have to say, Genesis, over the years as I've known you, you've really put yourself personally out there in terms of threats and just the safety of your family and your life. I know this is, you mentioned your family and you're in the history before. This isn't anything new to you. With your grandparents and father, what did you learn from them about driving change, and what are the things they did that inspired your work today?
For sure. My grandfather, Reverend Clyde Briggs, he passed away at age 42. And the surrounding his death, you kind of have to look at his life. He was a pillar in the community, a pastor of several churches in Franklin County, education reformist. My grandfather was a veteran. He went and fought and came home and realized, when I have to fight here too, because I'm not even seen as human. My children aren't even seen as human here. And he did whatever he had to do. And unfortunately, his children got shot at even, and then he still was just like, I mean, either they're going to die this way or they're going to die under this oppression, So he really taught me what it meant to not be afraid of death. As long as you're fighting towards something where you're going to create a more inheritable tomorrow for the next generation, then that is an honorable way to die. And that's, since I was a kid, I've always been like that, just not afraid of death. I don't want to die. I love life. I don't want to die. But
Genesis, that history that you gave about your family and how deep-rooted activism has been not just in your life, but really throughout the generations for your family in the state of Mississippi, and the way that you've been involved in the community, to me, I think that shows exactly what we're trying to bring forth around active justice, because it doesn't absolve communities, right? It doesn't absolve companies from saying, oh, I'm going to sit this one out, or just put out, a nice PR statement. It's about, hey, what are you going to do to actually create systemic change? Everybody can write a nice press release like, oh, we stand with these vulnerable communities. But what's kind of your go-to response when people are like, oh, we want to create systemic change, here's our press release?
I can't say I've thought about that response, in terms of if companies or organizations want to create systemic change. I mean, you have to have people on your team who know how to do that, or you have to pay consultants of people who are actually been doing that work. I don't think that there's a way to just step in. It's like if I wanted to be, an astrophysicist and change the game in astrophysics, whatever, I can't just jump in and do that. You need to build systems and a team and community around people who have experience in that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you have companies, Mel and I both work with lots of different companies, Mel way more so with the Social Innovation Summit. but they definitely want to be able to bring other people on board into the table that have that experience. And that's not necessarily something that we always see, but it's good to know from people like you who are not just on the front line, but you are actually making things happen, which is something that we can all strive and achieve for, that's really what needs to go forth. Less kind of talking, more doing, more strategic action and planning around, making systemic change a reality.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We work with a lot of companies, as you said, Corey, and everyone's in it for the right reason. Everyone wants to see social impact, social change, at least in my experience, and really, really great intentions. I think the first step that we've seen over the past couple of months is statements and big donations. And I think as we go forward, companies, look, we're all learning as we go about history and about the things that we need to change and understand and grow ourselves as we look to a more equitable future for us as a country and communities, etc. So companies are no different. They're looking for ways to grow, ways to understand, etc. And the big difference, as Genesis pointed out, we really need tour guides, if you will. We really need guides. We really need leaders with voices like hers, experience like hers, thoughts like hers, to make sure that we are doing the right thing. And Genesis, I know you could be an astrophysicist. I know you are so smart and talented that if you put your mind to it and wanted to do that, I know you could. So I know you joked that you couldn't be, but I have faith in you. Genesis, as I mentioned before, you're an artist. I don't know if you would say you're an artist first or activist first, or obviously combined. But I've always appreciated your music, but also now your artwork. How do you approach your activism through art?
So with activism, even like alluding to your last question, I always approach activism in a creative way, right? So it's like, depending on what your intention is or what your goal is, like to approach it creatively, that's always been my goal. So that's why I made the statement about the flag using props and at a show where people were expecting music, right? I gave them a theatrical show because it wasn't just, it was intentional. Like I knew that particular image, I didn't know how big it was gonna blow up, but I knew it would catch people's attention. And it would get across my point of like, this is what this history is. That the news lets you know what the history is. The flag is the symbol that I'm talking about, right? So I've always just combined creativity with pretty much everything that I do. Like I'm just very, I'm actually on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum. And so the way that I view the world is just in an artistic way. Like everything is art to me. And of course, like the analytical and logistic aspect of my brain is definitely strong as well, because I know how to make things happen using art, right? I know how to appeal to people's psychology using art, or how to evoke emotion with an intention for a particular purpose, means to an end. But I think art is underestimated when it comes to how to influence things around you and how to create impact and change. Like art is a very, 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 very powerful weapon of mass creation that is very untapped, I think, in a lot of ways. But there are a lot of activists, a lot of artists who are activists, because of our sensitive souls and our sensitive spirits, and we want to see good things happen in the world, and we hate to see bad things happen in the world. But to marry the two is a very, it can be challenging for some people. But for me, it's just like what my creator gifted me with. And my creator put me here in this realm to use my talents to make a more inheritable tomorrow for the next generation. So that's just always been my mission. Since I was a kid, I always knew what I was meant to be here for. My purpose.
Powerful.
Wow, that's very deep, very, very powerful Genesis. I want to take us back just a little bit to something you said earlier when you were going through the history of your family and how they've been so heavily involved in activism. And I'm just going to throw this here out at you and at everyone that's watching right now, because I was watching a YouTube video that was created 3 years ago in 2017 by ACLU attorney Jeffrey Robinson, and he brought up several good points. He actually did specifically reference the Mississippi state flag and other flags that were tied to the Confederacy, but he went into how monuments, like when they actually started popping up, which was always around the time of basically when there were activism movements. Then they started erecting statues and making these Confederate monuments around the country. But the thing that really stuck with me the most, Genesis, is that he said when slaves, at the height of slavery here in this country, slaves represented 13% of the US population. Now, mind you, I'm talking like 13 colonies. I'm not talking 50 states. 13% of the population. Today, currently, now we're going to bring in the 50 states, the Black population in the US is still 13%. A little over that, like 13.5, I think is the actual number, percent. What about that statistic resonates with you?
Well, I'm not good with numbers at all. I mean, what resonates, I guess, is like that it hasn't really gone up, and that's a surprise. Anything after that, I can't really draw any conclusions as to what that means. Well, when you start talking about percentages, and it's in Mississippi, the percentages of the Black population have been manipulated. So after slavery, Mississippi was 80% Black, like near 80% Black. Think about that. And that's when, Black codes and all of these laws to incarcerate, to lynch, to drive out. Mississippi had a mass exodus. That's why when you go to Chicago or go to Harlem and you talk to people, they're like, oh yeah, my grandmother's from Mississippi, my great grandmother. There was a mass exodus because of the terror campaign from the Klan to drive out that population, because they knew, they were like, whoa, suffrage. These people ever get a right to vote, we're done for. Like, we can't, now the population is closer to 40%. Which is also extremely high. It's the highest state per capita of a Black population, but that has been manipulated, and that was intentional to drive out that Black population. So that's what I do know about numbers and population. But in terms of the numbers that you put out, what do you like? What do you think? Like, what comes to your mind when knowing those?
My mind is there's a lot of the reasons you just stated have happened across the country, but also the fact that, you talk about the population control, people, you go into incarceration rate, you can go down a lot of different funnels, but that there needs to be systemic change, right, in order for those numbers to be different. If you're saying the population entirety of a country, of a particular demographic, hasn't increased in hundreds of years, that's very questionable across the board and a bit concerning.
Yeah.
Another way to look at it too is I think in this upcoming election, it will be the first, but definitely will be in existence, the majority minority in a voting block in terms of underrepresented or people of color or whatever. And so as you think of these percentages, one thing that is very relevant is how we change the country through voting. I'll be the first to say there's a lot of voter reform that's still needed out there across the country. But, it is inspiring to see that we are controlling our own future more and more with a higher percentage as that majority minority. I just recently saw the new John Lewis documentary, and in 1965, before the Voting Rights Act, only 2% of eligible citizens in Selma were registered to vote. And since then, over the decades, it's increased. And so I think even though, Corey, to your question, we have a long way to go, but I do really appreciate where we are moving with these percentages increasing, whether in voting blocks, in elections, or even in a place like Selma, going from 2% to whatever it is now. I don't know the number, but I'm hoping it's above 2%. I think it's above 2%. So that's one way to look at it as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like that's a whole nother like active justice episode around voting and moving that direction. Well, we have a little bit of time too before we even get to November to perhaps do something like that. And I mean, we are running a little bit out of time, but we do want to get in at least one more or two more questions to you, Genesis, before we have to let you go.
Sure. I'm here for y'all.
Something on my mind, Genesis, early in your work around this, I think you led a protest during Confederate Heritage Month, which I didn't know existed, and I don't even have the words to be honest with you. But Confederate Heritage Month, and you received a lot of headlines and some threats. What did that mean to you as a change maker? Not only with the flag, but just look. I'm going to say it. You're young. You're a lot younger than me. You have a lot of change making to do in the rest of your life. What does it mean going forward into the future as all these experiences have shaped you and strengthen your voice to the change that you want to see down the road?
That's a good question, man. Like this last week. So when that flag changed last week or a week and a half ago, it didn't feel like the end of a chapter. It felt like the end of a book for me. Mm-hmm. Meaning I don't know what's next. Like I have things lined up for my schedule. I'm supposed to be going on tour with Vote Common Good, which is the organization that goes deep into red territories to appeal to Christian voters to vote with morality instead of party allegiance. And everyone on the tour are like evangelists, ministers, preachers. And then there's like me and like Mia Pace, who's a singer from New York. So getting involved, I guess, with I've been pulled more into the religious side, even though that's not really, I'm not very religious, but like a lot of religious leaders have been pulling me in to use my talents to kind of speak about spirituality of our nation and what that means to me and where I see the spiritual aspect of America going, because to me it is a spiritual struggle. Marx thought it was an economic struggle. Some think that it's a political struggle, but to me, the underlying struggle is spiritual. So I'm learning on my end and calming my soul. And I'm really deep into my sobriety and things like that right now, meditation, to kind of answer that question of like, where can I be used next? Because, I'm just the vessel. Like we're all just vessels, our bodies and our voices are vessels for whatever you think, you're meant to be here for, but I'm just trying to be as clear myself as much as possible to see where I should be used next.
I know. I like that, Genesis. And on that note, while you're figuring out exactly where you're going to take your activism next, so what is kind of the leaving sentiment that you would want people to know if they're looking to get more active in social justice, where they're at? You started in your home state of Mississippi. Is that kind of where people should start? At home?
That's a good question, Corey. So my social and spiritual philosophy is called People, Not Things. And what that means to me is going back to this ancient truth that people are not the labels that we ascribe to them: rich, poor, trans, gay, Black, white. People are not the labels that we ascribe to them. They are complex, multifaceted humans who are worthy of dignity first and foremost. So I would say, tell people to start with, how are you perpetuating division? Starts with you. How are you leading your community? Your community could be your home. Your community could be your partner, your friend, your coworkers, your employees. How are you leading your community to follow this esoteric and ancient truth of people, not things? That's like my big definitive piece. It's a poem, and it starts with you and what you're doing and what your community is doing, and that radiates throughout the world. So I would tell them don't think so big, like think small, get a grasp on that, and then build off of that, because it's a slow, anytime you're dealing with a slow assault, which is what we are seeing with racism, which what we are seeing with sexism and patriarchy, white supremacy. It's a slow assault, generational trauma. So whenever you're dealing with that, you can't expect to do something immediately or something big and then it changes. Like you have to pull the pieces together. Who's working on this? How can you work with them and combine this? And it's like a puzzle piece, you know? So start small, brick by brick, build it up.
All right. I think that's excellent advice and a good place for us to end things, Mel.
Yeah, thank you, Genesis. You're wonderful. You're wonderful. I appreciate you so much. All the work that you do. You know, we have another friend who says the best part of me is the people around me. You're definitely the best part of me and us as a country. So really appreciate everything you're doing.
I appreciate y'all too. And I love you both. And I hope you guys have a beautiful day.
Yeah. Thanks so much.